Why did the Titanic, built in 1200 days, sink in just 2 hours? April 10th, 1912, was the day when the world's largest and most luxurious ocean liner, the Titanic, was all set for its maiden voyage. The Atlantic Ocean was incredibly calm, and there was no sign of an approaching storm. Around 1,500 passengers had boarded the ship, and thousands of people had gathered at the dock to witness the Titanic's historic journey. However, neither the passengers, the people bidding farewell, nor the Titanic's crew knew that 6 major mistakes had been made during its construction. Mistakes that would ultimately lead to one of the most catastrophic maritime disasters in history. Even Captain Edward Smith, who had 40 years of experience, failed to notice these errors. The Titanic was operated by the White Star Line, a company with experience managing 107 ships. Yet even they overlooked these crucial mistakes. Additionally, Harland and Wolff, the shipbuilding company responsible for manufacturing the Titanic, also failed to detect these errors, despite having built over 500 ships before the Titanic. Construction of the Titanic began in 1909, and after 3 years of work and the efforts of 2,000 workers, the ship was finally ready. The shipbuilders gained full confidence in their creation after the Titanic successfully passed its first test run. Following this, massive marketing campaigns were launched worldwide, promoting the Titanic as unsinkable. The ship's maiden voyage was set to depart from Southampton, England, on April 10, 1912, with New York City, USA, as its final destination. The cost of traveling in the Titanic's lower class section was $30, while a ticket in the first class section cost around $4,350 at the time, which is equivalent to approximately $340,000 today. Due to the extensive marketing, all tickets were quickly sold out. And finally, the much-awaited day arrived. The Titanic was ready for its first voyage. At exactly noon, the Titanic embarked on its journey, but the ship's mistakes started becoming evident immediately. Captain Smith had received strict instructions from the owners to reach New York within just 7 days by April 17th at any cost. Due to this pressure, the captain maintained an extremely high speed from the beginning. This was the Titanic's first major mistake. Every vehicle, machine, or ship has certain operating procedures, including speed limits. However, on the Titanic, this basic precaution was ignored right from the start. Within a short time, the ship had left the Southampton port far behind, surrounded only by the vast blue ocean. Mistake number 2: ignoring iceberg warnings. 3 days into the journey, the Titanic had stopped briefly in France and Ireland before continuing toward New York non-stop for 72 hours. On the evening of April 14, 1912, the ocean was eerily silent, covered in fog, reducing visibility significantly. That night, another ship, which was just a few hours ahead of the Titanic, sent wireless warnings about floating icebergs. Experts estimate that at least 6 warnings were sent, but due to negligence by the ship's wireless operators, these crucial messages were missed. The crew was too focused on attending to first-class passengers, and as a result, they did not take the iceberg warnings seriously. If they had, the entire disaster could have been avoided. Mistake number 3: no binoculars for lookouts. Despite the Titanic's high speed and the missed iceberg warnings, the disaster could have still been prevented. The ship's lookouts were alert, ready to warn the captain about any visible threats in the distance. However, they lacked one essential tool: binoculars. Yes, the Titanic's lookouts were on duty, but without binoculars, they couldn't spot the iceberg early enough. The iceberg was only detected when it was directly in front of the ship. roughly the size of a football field. By then, it was too late to change course. Mistake number 4. Weak rivets in the ship's construction. Since icebergs were a common obstacle in the Atlantic Ocean, large ships were usually able to withstand minor collisions. Captain Smith likely assumed that the Titanic would survive the impact as well. Upon spotting the iceberg, he ordered the engines to stop and tried to turn the ship away. Although the captain made every effort to avoid the iceberg, the distance was too short, and the Titanic collided with it in the center. There was still hope that the ship could survive if the impact didn't cause major structural damage. However, the Titanic had a fatal flaw. Its rivets, which held the ship's steel plates together, were made of cast iron instead of stronger steel. Cast iron is much weaker than steel, and due to the immense pressure of the collision, the rivets popped out, causing the hull to rupture. This flaw turned what could have been a minor accident into a full-scale disaster. Mistake number 5. Insufficient lifeboats. As water started flooding the lower compartments, the crew and passengers went into panic mode. Titanic's owner, Joseph Bruce Ismay, was also on board. Despite the flooding, there was still a chance for survival because the Titanic was designed to stay afloat, even if 3 of its compartments were flooded. However, the situation worsened when water reached the 4th compartment. Now, the ship was doomed. Captain Smith immediately sent an emergency distress signal, and passengers were ordered to evacuate. But another critical mistake now came into play. There weren't enough lifeboats. The Titanic had space for 32 lifeboats, but due to cost-cutting and overconfidence, only 20 lifeboats were placed on board. With 1,500 passengers and only 20 lifeboats, the chances of survival were drastically reduced. Mistake number 6. Lifeboats were underfilled. Amidst the chaos, everyone desperately tried to get onto the lifeboats. At 12:45 a.m., the first emergency boat was lowered into the ocean. But yet another mistake occurred. Many lifeboats were launched without being filled to capacity. Preference was given to first-class passengers, meaning the wealthy were prioritized over the general passengers. If all lifeboats had been fully occupied, many more lives could have been saved. As the Titanic sank, at 2:18 a.m., a short circuit caused the ship's lights to go out completely. The ship then broke into 2 pieces before fully submerging into the freezing Atlantic Ocean. The entire sinking took approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes, claiming the lives of around 1,500 people. The water temperature was around -2 degrees Celsius, 28 degrees Fahrenheit, making survival in the icy waters nearly impossible. In such conditions, a person could only survive for about 30 minutes before succumbing to hypothermia. Some experts believe the actual death toll was higher than reported, as many undocumented passengers had boarded the ship illegally. Most of the survivors were women and children, as they were given priority for the lifeboats. Captain Smith, who spent his final moments trying to save others, was the last person to jump from the sinking Titanic. This tragic event remains one of the most infamous maritime disasters in history. If these 6 mistakes had been avoided, the Titanic might have been remembered not for its tragedy, but for its triumph